Welcome back to the Lords of Lore podcast. I'm Matt,
I'm Luca.
And I'm Will.
and this is the podcast for all things fantasy and sci-fi nerddom. Today, we are tackling the topic of food in fantasy or sci-fi, or food and film in fantasy and sci-fi. Food, magical food, normal food in a magical setting or otherwise. So super excited to talk about that, but not before we get into some of our scheduled segments here. And before we do that, just want to thank everybody for watching our review of the Wheel of Time. So if you're new here and found us that way, welcome to the channel and the show, and let us know where you're listening from or how you're listening. Are you at work listening when you shouldn't be? Are you driving to work in your car, or maybe you're cleaning your house? I don't know. But yeah, welcome. This Friday, this coming Friday, we're releasing an episode of Ruminations wherein Luke and I review a book. That book this month is The Bone Shard Daughter by Andrea Stewart. So if you'd like to check that out, make sure you're caught up on that book. And even if you're not, we'll be doing a spoiler-free review if you're interested in hearing about what we would recommend or why we would recommend it. Or not, maybe. We don't know yet. You'll have to check that out. Last Friday, just a couple days ago now, we released a Unabashed of Love, Death, and Robots with Lavender from Breaking the Cycle podcast. So check that out. That was super fun. And if you're watching here on YouTube, make sure you're liking and subscribing to the channel. That helps us grow this community we're trying to build and helps the channel do more fun things. So I think that's it. We're going to start with some of our segments. And the first of which, I guess we're going to switch up the rotation. I almost forgot that before I went to do it. We'll start with Matt's Meanderous Musings. This is the segment where I talk about something that's not worth talking about as a main topic, but something that's bugging me. And I have no other place to talk about it. So what I wanted to talk about today was my trepidation towards fantasy set in the modern world. Or so an example would be like this guy, he's just a guy from New York and stumbles across he's the chosen one, and there's actually a society of knights underground and dragons, stuff like that. But also just like, yeah, this is like similar, like if anyone's seen Bright on Netflix, like, elves and orcs still exist to today, and it's a class society based off race, stuff like that. Not that I don't like properties that do this. I just watched Shang-Chi, and that's incredible. One of my favorite Marvel movies, but I loved it. But it does do this sort of, there's a whole nother world we don't know about, and it's sort of fantasy based or inspired by. But anytime I pick up a book and read the back, or have a book recommended to me that's like, oh yeah, he's just a kid from New York, or this girl who was living in Chicago, and the cover of the book is like a witch's something or other, I'm always like, I just can't. I don't know why. So this might be a therapy session for me, or you guys might feel the same way. But can I get you guys' initial thoughts on fantasy that does that?
I mean, I haven't read a lot that do that. The only one that comes to mind is the Percy Jackson series, if you guys have read that.
Harry Potter.
Yes, Harry Potter too. You're right. Yeah, I actually haven't read Harry Potter. I've only read the very last book.
Damn.
It was great. Yeah, it was good. Percy Jackson, though, I liked in junior high, so I did enjoy it then, but I haven't read any like new fantasy. I think Ninth House that I talked about is like, yeah, like fantasy world in modern setting, but I know nothing about it.
So, and little spoiler here, we're going to be doing Ninth House as our next rumination after Bone Shard Daughter. And I started thinking about this because although I'm excited to read it, and the author, I think it's Leigh Bardugo, prolific, which I didn't know about, but she has so many properties that are always like at the top of must-read fantasy lists. And then you said, let's try this one. I own it. I should probably read it at some point.
Yep.
So I used my credit on Audible, and I read the back, or like, the description. It was like, he's not your average GL student. And I was like, fuck. You kidding me? Like, but anytime I do watch or read or listen to a property that does that, it's never like I'm always into it. Like it doesn't make it worse for me. But the initial buy-in, I recognize like I'm like, fuck. Like, I don't know why. You guys have any ideas why I am the way I am? You know me pretty well.
I mean, there's no world building really. Like the world is, it's like it's all familiar. It's less of that classic fantasy flavor, regardless of like what the actual setting is. I feel like that's a bit of it. Like it's like less creativity, maybe, even though there's still great stories. It just like a bit of that mystery and fantasy is lost because it's like, oh, the world, you know.
I think you hit the nail on the head, to be honest. I love world building. Give me all the exposition all at once, right off the bat. Yeah, no, I think you're right because, and I think the reason why I am against it at first, but then I'm like, oh, cool, during is like because then the hidden underground society sort of opens up and you're like, oh, it's been here the whole time and this is how, exposition.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you. I was going to say also too, though, Harry Potter, sort of, but it also just because the time it was made and the time that now we're consuming it almost feels more like a period piece in a lot of ways, as well as a fantasy. So I guess it feels less to me like the world I know because it takes place in a era that I wasn't really around for. You know what I mean?
Like the 90s.
Yeah, like 80s, 90s.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, they don't have cell phones, or the internet really.
True.
Yeah. I mean, most of it
Or
takes place in
is
the
it
school anyway. But
is it the 90s though? Because
Yeah,
that
it's the
car
90s.
okay, super
Yeah.
old.
Yeah, I think because like the Voldemort era was like 60s to like 80s when he was
Okay,
like doing his thing. I just watched all the movies, so
nice. Yeah,
sick.
that's pretty much what I wanted to talk about. I don't know if it gets stupid than that. Lucas solved that pretty quickly there.
Conclusion:
So
we love world building.
yes, yeah, no, and I think that's a positive way to combat my distaste of that type of fantasy storytelling. It's that, oh well, I just prefer this opposed to it sucks and I hate it. That being said, everyone should go check out Shang-Chi. That movie fucking kicks ass, man. And yeah, I won't spoil anything about it other than what a great fantasy movie, and everyone should watch that. But we'll move on now to Luca's Litany of Literature, wherein Luca has a podcast within the podcast, talks a little bit what's going on in your life, which this week is
This week, I am reading still what we were going to be reviewing in a couple of days, so no spoilers. But we'll talk about the newly released God of War trailer. Is it God of War 5?
well, it gets tricky.
Like 10.
Ragnarok.
Yeah.
Yeah, I watched it just a couple of days ago, and it looks super exciting. I loved God of War 4. Matt, I ripped off a bunch of it for our D&D sessions.
Which piqued my interest enough to play it, and I ended up loving it as well.
Fantastic game. One of the best that came out on PS4, I think. I can't wait to play when does it come out? I don't remember.
2022.
December?
Yeah, it just said 2022, I believe.
Okay, 2022.
Yeah, it got I believe, because like I think it was supposed to come out like last year, or like originally intended to come out like around like now, but I think like Santa Monica had said that like there was a lot of like delays and stuff, which I'm willing to bet was attributed to COVID shutdowns and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Probably, but it's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, let's get into the trailer. My mind, at the front of my mind, has been Norse mythology since playing the game, which I only played for the first time in 2020, or no, maybe even the beginning of 2021. But also I've been reading this book, it's just off screen here, called The Witch's Heart. Hang on, let me grab the cover. vamp for a minute. Well done, guys. Good vamping. The Witch is Hard. This is just the jacket here, which is a really cool cover. You can check it out. Genevieve Gornichek, who I spoke briefly with a couple days ago and told her I loved her book. We talked about something totally unrelated, but it's a great book. It deals with the character, which I'm going to fuck up the pronunciation, but Angbot, I think is how it's pronounced, Angrboda. And that's a character that was revealed to be a character in the new God of War Ragnarok. So I have a lot of feelings about what that might look like. There's also associations with that character with characters we've already seen in the previous entry. But before we get into all the theories and speculations, I want to know what you guys' initial reaction to some of the information that was given out in the trailer and how we feel. So we'll start with you there, Will.
I'll be honest, I hated it just because of the reveal of a certain character.
I agree.
That like honestly like well, like I saw the trailer, it started playing because I was scrolling through Instagram. That's when I sent it to you, but then I was like, shit, I don't want to see it. So like I like clicked mute and then I like scrolled up. I was like, no, go away. And then like later that day, like I think it was either Santa Monica's own account or like another video game like Informer account that, and it showed like pictures, like it was like you know with like movies it will like have like the cast, like the character's name and then like who was casted for it.
Exactly.
Yeah, so they did that and it showed that one specific character and I was like, fuck man, like are you kidding me?
Yeah, I guess now's a
So
good time to issue.
then
If
I
you
watched
don't
it.
want God of War Ragnarok spoilers, maybe jump forward to the next segment of the show. But we'll get your thoughts too first, Luca.
Honestly, I don't remember what you guys are talking about. Like, what did you hate so much? I was just so excited about the game.
Oh, can I say the character?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
yeah,
All right.
we issued
Yeah,
spoilers. So
yeah, spoilers. This is your fault if you listened. Yeah, it's tier because like
Oh, right. Okay.
yeah, they showed him. It looks
Yeah.
like Kratos, but like skinnier and taller, like a
Mhm.
lanky Kratos and like old.
yeah, so
And I was like,
okay,
fuck,
so
man.
I agree with you that like when the reveal happened, I was like, man, I really wish they saved that for the game. That's like,
Right.
especially because you're essentially chasing the footprints of Tyr throughout the first game.
Yeah, you just
and
like find him.
following his legend.
Then you just like the camera cuts him just like hanging out in a cave, and I was like, what
Yeah,
the
it was
fuck?
very anticlimactic, and it sort of did a disservice to the journey from the first game. Whether, like, I know it's in the trailer, and I think they're smart enough that they wouldn't reveal something as groundbreaking as that in the trailer if that's all it was. Like, if that's how it exactly plays out in the game, I'm going to be a little bit disappointed. Or like if that comes like, you know, midway and further in the game, I will be very disappointed. I'm not gonna lie. But I feel like they're smart enough that they wouldn't reveal it unless it was a minor.
Yeah, there has to be a lot
Progress.
more to
Yeah.
it. Well, that then like that's what I thought about afterwards, and I think my understanding is that like this upcoming game is supposed to be like the wrap up to like the Norse setting as well.
Oh, you think so? You don't think
Yeah.
it'll be like a trilogy?
That's I read it somewhere, forgot, but I don't know, again I was scrolling through Instagram needlessly, and then yeah, well I mean like Ragnarok is supposed to be like the end of creation, so it'd
Yeah.
be kind of weird if they just like toss that in the second, unless they do like a part 1 and part 2, which would be like weird as hell.
Well, I think the whole thing, right, of okay, so again, to a little bit about The Witch's Heart, trying to avoid spoilers for that as well. If anyone wants to read it, it's fantastic. Again, tells the story of, I'm gonna call her Angbot, that's how I've been saying it in my head, or Angraboda, whatever. That character, her story and her descent and ascent into being a witch and the mother witch. But she has the gift of foresight, so she can see how Ragnarok will happen. And her way let's try to avoid spoilers, but sort of like how Odin is represented in God of War, of trying to know everything in order to prevent it. But it's more important the things you don't know, or the variables that are now being put into it that could change how things play out. There's some things that are set in stone, like Jormungandr and Thor fighting and killing each other. Those things are set in stone. At least that's the idea brought forth in this book. But there are things that, if the result hasn't been seen, then the result can't be determined and it can't be set in stone. So I think taking that idea into God of War, I think Kratos is the variable, right? He's not supposed to be here. Him being here is like the biggest variable of all. So I think things are not going to go according to how Ragnarok would normally play out because of his intervention. And I think that'll lead into the next game. That'll likely, but I mean, I don't know. I haven't played the game yet. I don't know where it's going to end up, but that's just my speculation. But like going through the trailer piece by piece, I guess, there again, the tier reveal, massively disappointing, but I have enough faith in the story group that like, that's not going to be, it's not going to be all. Like, I remember looking at him and being like, his eyes kind of remind me of Mimir's. What does that imply? Because there was, as far as I remember, there's something to do with Odin.
But it's like the gift that like the giants gave.
Right.
Like if you're like a giant friend or whatever, like you get like the eye portal things.
Right. Yes. Yeah. That they put Mimir's head, and then interesting. So that implies Tyr could also get them to Jotunheim or New, I guess. I don't know.
Or travel in time. So it was referenced.
Yes. Which again, okay, so the main thing I wanted to talk about this character, Angbod, is that she begins in the story I'm reading as Gulveg. So you might recognize that name from God of War 4. She's like the witch, you bring her bones back. This like the spirit asks you to do it. And Atreus is very like sympathetic to that cause. And Kratos is sort of like, yeah, don't be a fool. You can't help everyone. And then when they do help that spirit, it turns out Gulveg is this, what are they called? Revenants.
Yeah.
And you know, a massive one at that, and tries to destroy them. So my thought was like, oh, it's super interesting because in a lot of Norse mythology and in this book, Loki and Angbot are like husband and wife. And there's also Sigyn and stuff too. But so I thought it was very interesting that could be, because there's a lot of speculation of time travel elements coming into Ragnarok. I was like, oh, wouldn't that be cool if like that's why Atreus was so drawn to helping that specific person, is because like there was a connection that he hadn't yet made, but that, like, you know what I mean?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Because he's
yeah. I mean, spoilers if you haven't played God of War 4, I guess, but that's a huge reveal that Atreus is Loki. I've been rambling here. So, Luca, what are some things you picked up out of this trailer, and some speculations you have on how they might play out?
I know very little about Norse mythology, so my speculations are essentially non-existent. I expect a third game, just because it feels like they have enough success to justify a trilogy. And this, I have seen like screenshots and stuff as rumors that like there's mention of like the Egyptian pantheon in parts of God of War 4.
Right.
So like, are they going to start doing this like pantheon tour, like
yeah.
Which honestly, they did this one so well that I would be down for it. Like I would probably buy that game. But I have no idea how this will play out. I'm just super excited for another game that plays the same way as God of War 4 like that. I hope they do that no loading screen mechanic again.
Yeah, I can't see them dropping that.
It would be weird. They already did it. I just wish I had a PS5 to play it on. Like,
oh, it's fun. It is very, very cool. It's so cool because I didn't realize until like after I beat the game that there is literally no loading screen.
Yeah.
Like it never occurred to me because it was so seamless that I was just like, oh shit, yeah. Like what? That's crazy.
Yeah.
And then playing through again, I was like, wow, this is impressive how they've like circumvented
Yep.
loading screens.
Going through the world tree.
Exactly.
You just keep walking until it's ready.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, like one, I guess, like thing that I picked up on it once because I was like Uncharted 3 was like really bad for this, but like one of the ways to like circumvent loading screens is have like the character like crawl through like a tight space. And like we see that like several times in God of War, and that's actually like the next area is just like loading. And
Oh,
like
right. When you like ducks underneath,
yeah, like when you first get into like when you first get to like the base of the mountain, like after like a couple hours in, like right pretty much when you beat the intro, it's like, and then you start to get into it, like, and then like when he's like crawling through it, there's like all the dead skeletons and stuff like that.
yeah.
Yeah, that's just like the game loading the next area because Uncharted series was horrible for it.
Yeah.
You just like crawl forever.
I think the thing about God of War, opposed to like other or compared to other games that try to do the same thing, is that the ones in God of War felt like deserved in
Mhm.
that they would be giving you story aspects or lore aspects while those things were happening.
Yeah,
That way
like,
it feel like, oh, I should be paying attention to whatever this character's saying, opposed to realizing this is like a cut between two different loading zones.
yeah, like I also liked like even when you're just like paddling around like in the lake and like they just like drop like conversations and stuff like that
Yes.
to like fill in backstory, which I thought was pretty cool. So
Yeah.
I wonder if they'll have something similar to that where it's all in one area.
Well, yeah. So I did notice in the trailer, because of it's Fimbulwinter, right? Or is it
Yeah.
Thimble?
I don't know.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Sure. The Fimbulwinter. The lake is frozen,
Yeah.
and so they're using a sled instead. And one of the sleds, or the sled, is pulled by two wolves, or big dogs, I guess. Probably wolves though. One of them's black and one of them's white. I think that was like a allusion to who are the two wolves that chase the sun and the moon.
Scaldy and something else like Scotty. I don't know.
Scotty's giantess
doesn't know.
huntress.
Uh,
But yeah, I think Scald is right, and I can't remember the other one. But
Hold on.
also
Quick
Loki
fact.
births a wolf named Fenrir with like green eyes. So I think it might have been allusion to Fenrir as well, or at least a little Easter egg or something. So that'd be interesting to see. We also know like the cave drawing at the end of God of War, where we see Loki actually like birthing
Skull and
Jormungandr.
Hati.
Skull. Yeah.
Yeah, which is on one of the on like one of like the myth boards that like you open up, like the
Yes, yeah.
cabinet things. Yeah. Skull
And I
and
think,
Hati.
if I'm not
Close.
mistaken, I think one's black and one's white. No.
I don't know.
At least
that-
that's how it was in one of the puzzles that were in the game.
Yeah. I think it's just depicted because it like one chases sun and moon or something like that. Like there's that connection there.
Yeah. So that's one thing I noticed too. I also noticed an area that didn't seem to be affected by Fimbulwinter. Like it looked like spring there, and then they're also rowing a boat. So I'm not sure which world that is.
Yeah.
My guess is where it can only be Vanaheim or Asgard, because later on in the trailer we actually see people like walking around like in a small town.
Yeah. Or
and
that the one place where it has motherfucking where the dark elves come from. Because there's one of the elven realms that we can get to.
Svartalheim.
Yeah. Like the nighttime place. And then or it could even just be another spot in Midgard, maybe.
It could be. But as far as I know, like all of Midgard freezes over for Fimbulwinter. I could be wrong though.
Yeah.
And again, it could be one of those areas of this game and this story that diverges from Ragnarok, because of, there being X factors involved. So I'm interested to see that. I'm hoping we get to visit all 9 worlds, or at least the other 4 that we didn't get to visit.
Yeah.
Which brings
Or
me to the next thing I noticed. When we see the reveal of Angbot, we see like the background she's in is like the red trees and earth type of thing. So I was like, that's either where Freya was in Midgard or that's Vanaheim, which is super interesting. Again, that character did deal with the Vanir. That's what they're called, right?
Yeah.
And taught them her magic of foresight as well as the Asgardian gods. So that could be involved as well. And again, the love interest of Loki. So I'm interested to see how that plays out. And I think they're like relative the same age, or at least in appearance. So that could be super interesting.
Really?
Yeah. And then the scene almost made me cry where he was like, start thinking like a general. And he was like, no. I was like, oh man, he's a father now. That's so nice. And then obviously like the duality between the first, like the intro in God of War of hunting for the deer, and then what appears to be the intro of this game, with Kratos there looking over the knife from Faye, sorry, and then Atreus. We see Atreus come in like with a deer like slung over his shoulder, just like that visual representation of like the growth. Was super cool. Yeah, Will, school us on some Norse mythology that I'm probably butchering.
Yeah. No, it's okay.
Yeah.
No. So like, I've never. So like all my info that I know, I got in this book. It's called The Norse Myths. I don't have it with me right now because it's in a box somewhere. By Kevin Crossley Holland. It came out in 2012. Funny stories. I was actually, when I was starting my undergrad, it was like the summer weeks before. So I went to the bookstore to pick up my textbooks and I saw it there, and I thought it was like cool, and I thought if I got it, I'd look a lot smarter, which wasn't the case. Because it's kind of like a little bit more of like an academic book in the sense that like they have like footnotes and stuff like that, and notes. But like it just kind of tells it's set up like chapters, and then it's just like, this is the fight between Loki and Balder. And then yeah, I read it like a few years ago, but I completely forgot everything about it. I only know that I can confirm that I read it though, because I took it with me on a trip, and that was like my only form of entertainment. Yeah, but what we know today of Norse myth basically comes from the two sources, the primary source being the poetic Edda, and then the secondary, which was kind of a rip-on of the poetic Edda, which was the prose Edda. The poetic Edda contains like all these, I think it has like 30 poems or something like that. It's like a group of poems that make up the major base of Norse myth, and all of that was kind of stuffed into this book called the Codex Regius, also known as the Book of Kings. It's from Iceland.
From Yu-Gi-Oh. No, sorry.
Same thing. Iceland, Yu-Gi-Oh. Yeah. So I think dating, I'm not 100% sure exactly when, like the exact date as to when it would have, when the Poetica Edda was dropped. I think it was I think like
it's
said,
Donda, Certified Lover Boy, Poetic Edda.
Yeah. No, it would have been pre, because that I think it said like where I was reading was basically like 12th century, so 1100s sometime. I think later, because the prose Edda, which was written by this Icelandic boy named Snorri Sturluson. I don't know how to pronounce it. Yeah. Actually, side note, when I was reading some of the stuff up, I found a YouTube channel by a guy named Dr. Jackson Crawford. He's like this Norse myth expert from some university in Colorado, but his channel is pretty sweet. I recommend it. It's he's like this like super cowboy with like a super deep like cowboy drawl, but like
Give us your best.
I don't know, I can't even do it. Like, yeah, but like he'll do like he has like tons of content on it, but like he actually just released an audiobook of him like going over the poetic Edda, and I think he said he's doing the prose Edda, is supposed to release sometime soon as well. Yeah, and so like he compared the poetic Edda to a mixtape kind of, and that just happened to be stuffed into the Codex Regius. So the Codex Regius isn't the poetic Edda, but the poetic Edda is in the Codex Regius.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, and so like in the prose Edda was kind of written as a way to like teach people. Again, this is going off the info that I got from Dr. Crawford's thing, but it was kind of used as a way to like I guess like preserve and also like teach people how to write in Norse poetry, like those Norse poetry style, which has tons of alliteration and stuff like that. And apparently, the Snorri guy was kind of an old head, and he was kind of tired of all this English and French poetry styles that were pretty popular at this time. So he was like, let's revive the good old days. So like I guess like the way I would read the prose Edda is kind of like a textbook, and like it's kind of more in depth, but like it's not as like as vast. I've never actually read both of them. I'm kind of interested in listening to the audiobook now because Jackson Crawford has a pretty sweet voice.
I want to hear the mixtape.
Yeah. um his channel's pretty sweet. Like he like has like these like mini segments where like he'll just like go outside in the middle of the woods at night and just like camp out, and then he'll just like read like stories like by the campfire and stuff
By himself.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, he has like an assistant because he was like, yo, well, he was like spoke to them off camera and stuff like that. But yeah, he's strange guy, but definitely recommend it. Yeah, those two sources are kind of just where we get all of our information from. So like Ragnarok and all the Acer and Vanner, like that, like the conflict between those two, and then Ragnarok and all that stuff is kind of all just dates back specifically to the poetic Edda, because that was like the primary source that has all of this stuff, and I think it's like the oldest one as well. I'm not 100% sure if Norse cultures were like did much writing. Mind you, like a lot of cultures didn't do that much writing back in the day as well. So I would assume that a lot of the stuff was kind of more of like a oral history, at least for like a long period in time. Because like when I first heard of like the poetic Edda, I was expecting to be like a lot older. I was thinking like 600, like 680 to like 900 AD, like those like prime Viking years and stuff like that. And then yeah, so like I was kind of shocked, especially to hear that the prose Edda dropped merely a few decades, possibly a century afterwards, akin to Certified Lover Boy and Donda.
Deluxe album edition. It's got like a few extra poems in there.
Yeah, no, I haven't read it.
Who's going to hell tonight?
Yo, me, because I have the blades of chaos. They'll keep me warm. Yeah, I've never, like I said, I've never actually read them, just because I'm not really big into poetry.
It's I think it's weird too, like even like the Green Knight, which we talked about a couple weeks ago. Like I have the book sitting there, and I'm just like, today's not the day. I was like reading old English and just old works where like obviously language has adapted and changed. So like reading something like The Witch's Heart is really interesting to me, because it's like I know these stories and I know the references, and like even if I don't, I can like look up someone in Norse mythology and be like, oh cool, that's how it was written in the Edda. And then, oh, here's how it's, different. and this is like the artistic deviation or interpretation. So that's really interesting. But for me to go back and like read that old work it's like really challenging, because like it's almost like I know the language, but I have to read it and then decipher it and what it means in modern English. Like oh man, you use way too many syllables to say you're cold or whatever. You know?
Like, yeah, because like I have like a copy of like the Canterbury Tales and the Mort du Arthur, both of
I was
which
gonna buy that yesterday actually.
yeah, and like they're pretty sweet, and like it's kind of nice because like a lot of the works it's just like a compilation, so it's all like smaller stuff that you could just like digest a little bit easier, but it is kind of a slog to get through. Yeah, that's why like I always read the Norse myths by this Kevin Crossley Holland guy, because he's very like straightforward. Like a lot of the chapters are fairly short and it's just kind of straight to the point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so like you have like the chapter of like Balder and Loki, and Balder fucked around and found out, and that's pretty much it, wrapped it up in 10 pages or less.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that was informative. I like I'm so interested in Norse mythology, and I think mostly because like my introduction to it, obviously there's things from like across the pop culture world that reference, but I think for me and a lot of people's, it might be like the Marvel movies might be your first real like deep dive into what that is, and that's such a like different interpretation of it like I don't think it's unfortunate that that's people's intro to it, but I do think it is funny that like it's not at all it's so far removed. And we get shades of it in like Thor Ragnarok, of peeling literally the foundation away, the cracks in the foundation, and seeing what Odin was really like. That's really cool. More accurate to how he would, and like I think that's interesting too, is like historically Odin has always been a fucking dickhead. Like that has never changed. And you see like Marvel being like, oh, what if he's not though? It's so funny.
Yeah, like especially because like like Marvel is just like this gentle old father figure, and then like Odin is technically the god of war in Norse mythology. So yeah, you have that. I think my favorite was when I saw like the comments under like the God of War reveal trailer, or like just I guess official trailer now, was like when people were like, what the fuck happened to Thor?
Yeah,
Thor really let himself go.
Yeah, wait, can we talk about this? Because it fucking pissed me off, man.
He's just like this Northern English football fan.
Like but it's both sides though, right? Like okay, so first the reveal of the Angbot character, like she's like a dark-skinned woman, people are fucking losing their minds, and people from Santa Monica Studios, like the story team there, replied like, yeah, hey, you've never read the Poetic Edda, and if you had, you'd realize that skin color and complexion is actually never referenced, so shut the fuck up and play a different game, is basically the response, which is fucking awesome. Like shout out to them. But also like, so okay, so when Endgame comes out and Thor's packed on a couple pounds, I think a lot of people missed why that was done as a story narrative.
2021 like, will in the winter.
But it's like, man, he fucking went into a deep dark depression when his brother and literally all his people were murdered in front of him, and they lost, and like he didn't come out of it. Like, and that's just a side effect sometimes of how people deal with depression. Like sometimes that happens. But the main thing is that at the end of the movie, spoilers for Endgame if you haven't seen it, he's still worthy of wielding both Mjolnir and Stormbreaker. That's the important part, is it's like showing like a triumph coming out of depression, or dealing with depression, I should say, of like that doesn't make you any less worthy of greatness or love from the people around you. That's the point. So like seeing the response to this Thor, like obviously, like I think it might have to do too with like at the end of God of War, obviously Thor comes across as an aggressor because he shows up at the door and he's like, "What the fuck is up?" You know. And
throwing
then
it
in
down,
the
you're gonna pick it
trailer,
up.
yeah, trailer, it's like you seem like a reasonable man, like that whole thing. It was like, oh shit, like Thor's here to kick some ass. And then like the reveal, like you see him from the other side of the cloak, and like
It's a
it's just a
unit.
big lad, man. Like so like people being like, this is not how Thor's supposed to look. It's like, how is he supposed to look then? Like he's a giant dude. Like
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, but like I think he's like if I recall, like that's how he's always been interpreted as like this absolute unit of a guy.
Yeah,
like
just a
like
thick lad.
like I think of like Gimli when I think of like I guess the classic OG Thor, and yeah, no, definitely.
Even going back to like the 70s, 80s, 90s renditions of Thor in Marvel Comics, he's not fucking this Prince Charming the way he is now. He's a fucking thick dude with
Yeah,
like a scraggly beard and like he looks like a Norse god. Like I can't stand like I don't mind Chris Hemsworth as Thor. I think he's great in the role. I just hate that that's people's interpretation of what Thor should be. Like this fucking like, you know,
unrealistic.
essentially Prince Charming knight.
Hey.
Fucking, it's like no.
He's a terrible person too. Like,
Yeah, he's the worst, man.
Yeah.
We should be like, but he's kind of hot though. Like, fuck that. Like,
he's a monster.
or if you're like, yeah, he is hot, then there's nothing wrong with that either. Like, he's just a dude. Like,
Yeah, because well, I mean, like even in I found like Assassin's Creed Valhalla did a really good job. So they have like a segment like in the past, like the mythology, I guess settings and stuff like that in Assassin's Creed games of late have been like usually been like DLCs, whereas in Valhalla it's just like you go to like this medicine woman's hut in your village that you make, and then you just like get fucked up on like mushrooms or something like that, and then you get like transported to like the mythological era, which is pretty cool. Totally forgot about it, not gonna lie, and I've been playing it this whole time, like all summer, and then until you mentioned it earlier today. So I was like, oh shit, yeah, because I did that like when it came out. But yeah, I found like the depictions were like pretty good too. Definitely like the cast of characters like of gods that are depicted are like not as like there's only like a handful of them, but just like again, like these segments only take like a few hours to beat, and then that's it. What do you call it? Is yeah, like Thor is like basically this like definitely more like the interpretation and portrayal of Thor and AC Valhalla is like a lot more closer to like God of War, maybe like less aggressive and just a little bit more like stupid.
yeah,
Because
I think Luca, was you saying like he's a really bad person. Like,
yeah,
the whole like, and they talk about it in God of War, but this goes back to the Edda and that Thrym, right, is the giant who steals Thor's hammer and demands that he be married to Freya in exchange for the hammer back. And so they play along and go to the wedding, and then Thor gets the hammer back and literally murders everyone there. Like,
yeah,
and
which is
then like,
actually spoilers is a plot point in AC Valhalla. That's
oh really?
It's a little bit different, but there is that like demand from specifically an ice giant to marry Freya, and it's pretty funny because like so like the characters in AC Valhalla, they're all like descendants of these mythological characters. They just don't know it in like the I guess more in like the present day setting that they use in AC Valhalla, but like so it's almost like a dream sequence, but it's kind of like remembering their past lives.
Right.
So like the titular character is actually like the depiction of Odin, and then Thor is just in there as well. And like yeah, it's kind of funny because like the Freya's basically like, yo, what the fuck? Like, I don't want to marry a giant. Like, I don't even know this guy. And then like Thor's just like, yeah, fuck it. Like, I just want to get my hammer back. Like, we'll deal with it afterwards. Yeah, but like, and like AC Valhalla, like I think even in like the character descriptions, like Thor is basically they tried to keep it like as close as they could to the OG interpretation, where it's just like thick lad, but also like kind of like ugly and stupid, I guess, for lack of better words. Um, which is definitely the exact opposite of what we see in Marvel movies. But like again, in AC Valhalla, he's definitely like super aggressive and just wants to
Yeah,
fight.
I think in Marvel, like especially like in Thor Ragnarok, he's definitely like a himbo, like no questions asked. But I think in the previous Marvel movies, they try to paint him as like this, noble, stoic guy, and it's like not quite, it didn't quite land the way they thought it would.
I
And so
guess like
the himbo representation works a lot better. That movie's great.
yeah. Uh yeah. Oh, I'm definitely hyped. At least like I don't think if I remember correctly, the trailer didn't show Odin either. So
No, so yeah, that could.
it'll be man, yeah, I'm definitely curious to see what the reveals will be. It'll be definitely booking the next like 3 days of my life off when it drops.
I might do the same. Then we can review it right away. That'd be fun.
Yeah. Yo, Santa Monica, link us a copy.
Yeah, straight up. If you're watching. So let's get into our main topic here. Now, Luca, you suggested this topic, so why don't you go ahead and introduce us for it?
Yeah, I thought of this topic while I was listening to the Goblin Emperor talking about let me find the exact thing they were talking about when I messaged you guys. Oh. Yes, sliced pears in yogurt, sorbet, and mushroom and venison pie.
Ooh,
And they're describing like a dinner scene. And I was just thinking about how just food described does so much for world building and setting a scene. I was like, we should talk about all the delicious things you see and hear about in fantasy sci-fi. So I don't know, you guys want to start with some favorite examples?
Yeah, maybe let's start with why this is included in fantasy.
Well, for one, it's like it helps establish culture.
Yes.
And a great example of that is actually the Stormlight Archives. The main culture we follow, they're from a country called Alethkar, and they're very gender divided, with like very specific gender roles, where men are soldiers, women are scholars. And they even culturally separate their foods, where women eat more sweet and salty and men eat more spicy and sour foods. And it just like does a really good job of setting the cultural dynamic between the characters. When you see like dinner scenes where like men and women are divided, eating their separate prepared meals, separate flavors, like suited to their gender roles. And just like it helps you be more immersed in the world with a well-described cuisine.
Yeah. So here's some background information about this podcast. We were supposed to record this episode a few days ago, but I had to reschedule due to some unforeseen circumstances. But I had prepared myself in that the day before I went for ramen, because I knew when we talked about this, I would only be able to think about the ramen we see in like Naruto or like Studio Ghibli, like, or any anime for that matter. And it would make me so hungry that I would be upset with myself if I couldn't eat it then and there. And then I was ready to record on a full stomach, and then we had to reschedule. And now I'm here and I haven't eaten dinner yet. And I'm like, this is going to be painful because there's so much good stuff to talk about and so many great visuals. I want to start off following you, Luca, with a quote from one of my favorite novels and series. This is the Raven Shadow series. I talk about it ad nauseum. The second book called The Tower Lord by Anthony Ryan. So there's this character called, I think she's just referred to like as the woman. She's a piece of shit. So if you read that series, you'll soon find out why. But she says, which is a quote just from everyday life as well. Hunger is always the best seasoning, she said. And when it was all gone, the first smile in days appearing on her lips. But I love that quote, is hunger is always the best seasoning, because the world in which this story takes place in, there are a lot of people who are going without food and are hunting as a means of survival more so than a means of financial gain or trade. It's like, I need to eat, so I need to hunt. And there's a lot of travel in, dangerous climates where survival is sort of at the front of everyone's mind, especially in the second book. It's all about survival. So I thought that was interesting. And again, going to what you're saying, Luca, being part of the culture of the story and part of the world building, there's a lot of stories that do this well. When you were speaking, example came to mind, Blade Runner. You see like Deckard eating the like noodles at one of the shops. I think it did like a really great job of like showcasing how that city, I think it's LA, if I'm not mistaken, just like the boiling, I hate using boiling pot as a way to express multiculturalism, but in that story, it's that everyone's sort of been forced into these areas that aren't polluted, and so that the culture is sort of molded into like one solid culture. So there's foods and language that are sort of made up of this combination of different groups of peoples meeting together. I think something as simple as like American PI eating noodles at this noodle shop was like a very, and speaking like sort of like a broken Japanese to the store owner was really cool, and a good way to do that. Will, do you have an example off the top of your head?
A few, but just after hearing that, I also think of like Firefly, which is like Western, space Western, but it's also like heavily influenced with I guess like Chinese culture and stuff. So like a lot of the like food, as well as like a lot of like language, like one of the more popular languages is like in the galaxy is Chinese. I'm not sure which one, if it's, I think it's Mandarin. But yeah, but like they definitely have like a lot of like Chinese inspired foods. Actually one of the, because like I've been reading The Inheritance Cycle. I actually started book 3 today.
Nice.
Yeah, I've been muscling through them, but food is actually talked about quite a bit. So like the main character Aragon, he goes to like live with the elves, which are basically just like Tolkien elves, just slightly different. Um, and during there, he's a part of this special ceremony that he just happens to be there because it happens like every 100 years or something like that. And then there's this moment where like his body is like magically transformed. So like being a human, he like kind of turns into like kind of an elf, like he's kind of like stuck in between. So for example, like he gets like slightly taller, he becomes a little bit slender, but he's like faster and has like superhuman strength and stuff like that. But like as like his training progresses, his like because well like a lot of the magic is actually deals with like I guess like psychic magic as well. So like he becomes like it's kind of like Jedi stuff in that like he learns to like sense like all these other living beings and stuff like that. And like in like how you fight with magic is like you like forcibly enter someone's mind and then like break them down from within. So but like in order to like get to that stage and learn how to fight, he has to become like more aware of like the world around him. And when he goes through this transformation, it's like I guess like the scale of where the like of his awareness of his surroundings like becomes like tenfold. um so he actually stops like eating meat because like he becomes like disgusted
Oh
um
wow.
with because like when he's like walking around, like he's like in everyone's minds and stuff like that, like at all times. So he's like fully aware of like ants and insects as well as like larger animals like deer and stuff like that. And so because of that, he actually like stops eating meat. um and like a lot of the elves are kind of like that because they're already like aware of their surroundings and have these deep connections with like the forest that they live in. So it's kind of funny because in the third book he goes back to the humans and like the rebels and stuff like that, and like everyone like is like super off put by it, and like because he just like didn't notice it because all the elves basically just assumed he was one of them. um but yeah, and so like he basically just becomes like a vegetarian. And I read a chapter earlier this morning where he has like meat for the first time in like a year, and he's like, and it's like out of like necessity, but he's like absolutely like disgusted with himself.
Yeah.
Because like he's basically like lost in a desert, kind of running away and like being hunted down. So like he just like kills like a reptile and like cooks it up, and then he's just like absolutely horrified by the act that he just did.
Mhm.
Yeah, which I thought was like pretty cool because like it's definitely like a recurring thing that always pops up. um but yeah, like food is also described as a way to like show a lot of like cultures as well, especially with like other races, like with like dwarves and stuff like that as
Yeah,
well.
absolutely.
um because like he definitely like he always uh like when he like gives up meat, he like absolutely hates it, but because he like remembers like this one feast that he was at when he was like staying with the dwarves, and he was like, fuck, this sucks, but I also just like don't want to eat another living being like when I'm like in its mind all the time. um
Yeah.
yeah, which I thought was cool. Also,
Speaking of, oh, sorry, go ahead.
also Star Wars, when they have like the when Ray gets the
Portions. Yeah.
yeah, she gets
I
paid
had
with
written
bread.
that
I thought it was
down.
cool.
Sort of an example of being able to showcase like the difference in class. In that, you know, we see all the hard work she puts in just to get this shitty piece of bread. Like, um,
Yeah.
yeah. And just her status is like a scavenger. But speaking of being in something's mind, I want to talk about the effect visualizing or describing food has on people. And so this is why, you know, a movie would show you food, or advertisements show you food, or an author might describe food. There is a hormone called ghrelin, I believe it's pronounced. That's GHRELIN. Um, and it's released in greater amounts when you take in visual stimuli. Um, so ghrelin is produced in the stomach and is responsible for creating appetite by acting on a region in your brain known for controlling the amount of food you eat. When you see a photo of delicious food, ghrelin is rapidly released into the bloodstream, causing a spike in your appetite. So literally when you're seeing food on screen, or like behind Luca there's literally a physical thing that's happening to your body, like chemically, causing you to be more hungry. So it's not just your mind being like, oh, wouldn't that be good? It's literally a physical thing that's happening to you, making you salivate, um, making you feel more hungry than you might be. Um, so I find that interesting alone. Obviously, that is great for advertising if you're in the food industry at all. And I mean, that's why there's pictures on menus, I guess. But sorry to anyone who's watching this video on an empty stomach. You're probably pretty frustrated. I do remember though, in Dragon Ball, after Goku's like first tournament, I think he loses to Master Roshi, but he takes him out to dinner after, and Goku ends up eating so much food that it's all the prize money from the tournament. So in a way, he sort of won. But I remember the way he was eating his noodles, just like in the animation, just blah, 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 blah. I remember I was like, I want that. That's all I want. So I remember like with my cereal, my mom used to get so fucking mad because I would just be like, like spilling fucking everywhere. But it was like that feeling of like, man, I want what Goku had, like all those bowls piling up. They do like a time lapse animation shot, and just like wanting that. So when I was eating ramen the other day, obviously I wasn't making an ass out of myself in the restaurant, but it was that feeling of like, like I feel like Naruto after a big fight, or Goku after a tournament type of thing. That sort of release.
Yeah.
Oh, but I also like when food is like metaphor for like temptation. Um, so he's the Spiderwick Chronicles. There's an example of that where like this character can no longer eat human food because she was enticed by the Fae or the fairies in that universe to eat their fruit, and only they will bring it to her. And so she's in a home, and the people are like, yeah, she just doesn't eat. Like, we don't know how she's still alive. But like, there's these invisible fairy creatures coming and giving her fruit. And then also, two like very clear examples of this would be like Willy Wonka. Everybody who fucking gives in, they gave into temptation, and so they lose. But as well as the White Witch, the Turkish delight in Narnia, and also that as being a biblical allegory, that serving as like if what's his name, Edmund, right, is Judas, then he's sort of like giving into the temptation. Or it could even be an example of like Adam and Eve, Eve biting the apple, or taking the apple rather. Yeah, you guys have any examples of food as temptation, or have you ever been tempted by food yourselves?
I mean, naturally. But there is that scene in Pan's Labyrinth with the hand-eye monster, where all she had to do was not eat anything off the giant table of food.
Oh, that reminds me of that thing you took from The Witcher and put in your D&D campaign.
Oh,
where,
yeah.
like, you're supposed to eat with the woman.
Yeah. There's a mission in The Witcher where there's like a ghoul woman you need to eat soup with to break her curse. And her house is full of spoons.
Yeah.
Great mission.
There goes Will again. Oh.
Disappearing into the limbus.
Yeah. Speaking of limbus, that is a really cool way of actual fantasy food. Food that has magical properties to it.
Yep. Speaking of food with magical properties, the entire magic system of One Piece is based off of fruits with magical powers.
Ah, right.
Each having a specific power and only one being in existence. And once you eat it, you get that power, but you lose the ability to swim, which is kind of important in a world that's like only islands.
Yeah, in the pirate anime, it's pretty important to swim. Yeah,
but it's a cool way to do your magic system.
Yeah. Obviously there's also like Harry Potter too, where like a lot of the stuff there is magical.
Yeah, like potions and stuff. And like the gillyweed heats.
Yeah, that for sure as well, giving you like physical attributes, but also just like the chocolate frogs. Birdie bots, magical beans that taste like things they're not supposed to. Have you ever tried those?
I have.
Do you remember a specific one that was awful?
Yeah, there was like earwax, grossed out, like dirt.
Earwax, dirt, or gross. Man, we should have got them. We're all in different locations, obviously, for filming this, but at some point in the future, if we do the show in person, we'll have to bring some Birdie Bots beans. Butterbeer also from Harry Potter. Have you ever tried butterbeer?
I haven't. But speaking of food from fantasy, the green dragon from Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, for sure.
In the Shire, I've been in it, and I had a ginger ale. Yeah, in New Zealand, like you can go to the film location of the Shire, like they kept the set and everything, and you can tour around. It's like a private sheep farm.
That's very cool.
And they have the green dragon there, and they sell beer and ginger ale.
So that was recently, right? Because I know after the Lord of the Rings, they took that set down, but after the Hobbit, I think they kept it up as a tourist sort of thing.
I don't know that they took it down because it's like Bilbo's house is there, and like the Lord of the Rings equipment is there. Like the tree that they had, and like the tree above his house in the Lord of the Rings is still there. And I mean, the green dragon is from the Lord of the Rings. So I think they've been doing tours since Lord of the Rings came out.
Oh wow, that's very cool. And so you had a ginger ale there?
I had a ginger ale there, yeah.
How come you didn't have anything off like the menu?
Well, the menu was beer and ginger ale.
Oh, that's it. Okay, like they don't serve food?
Oh no, yeah, they give you like a sandwich. It was like a free thing you get with the tour of the place.
Oh, very cool.
And I was underage and with my parents, so it was ginger ale.
Oh, so this is a while ago.
Yeah, it was like 8 years ago, maybe more.
Okay, yeah.
But
that's cool.
Yeah, the beers there look good. And speaking of Lord of the Rings and Lembas, that soup that Aragorn gets from Eowyn in the Two Towers?
Oh, yeah.
It's
No,
like it's
I don't
It
remember.
tastes like shit.
it's the seed. Yeah, it's like
Oh
the
yeah,
seed
yeah,
It was in
where she
the
finds out how old he is.
it's
Yeah.
in the extended cut.
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
right.
I've always thought that soup looks delicious. Like that thing he takes out looks like a shrimp. Like I've always thought it just looked so good. But like obviously to him it's gross, but it looks
Even
delicious.
the rabbit stew that Sam's
Yeah.
making always looks so tasty to me.
And the little box of salt he almost drops at the beginning of the Two Towers.
Grab it, Mr. Frodo. Oh, that's one of my favorite scenes. Just like I get another way food plays a part in the story is like how important that salt is to Sam. Like
Yep.
he's willing to risk the whole journey. Oh, I'm not going there if I'm not getting salt on my food. Come on, man.
I mean,
On second breakfast. Like,
Yeah. Oh yeah, as well. And just the difference in culture, right? Like
mhm.
yeah. But I mean, also salt would have been just like based off of like historical stuff, real world lore. Salt would have been pretty hard to come by. So valuable, right?
Well, he did say it was his special salt.
yeah, it's like
Exactly.
herb and garlic salt.
Which is like, oh yeah.
Oh, and low key that fish that Gollum eats raw, like
Oh no, hell no.
it looks
Did
so
you guys
juicy.
have the same thing? I remember watching cartoons and movies, but I remember specifically cartoons being like, "Wow, I can't wait to try beer. It looks so tasty,"
Yep.
and being very, very disappointed.
So disappointed. It's gross. Like it was just nasty.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
with the frothy top. I you know what it was is like remember those little root beer candies?
Hmm.
I thought beer would taste like root beer. I don't, I'm not gonna apologize for that. That's a as a child, I think that's a fair assumption to make.
Yeah.
And I was massively disappointed.
The first beer I ever had was like a Guinness, like the dark stuff.
Which I enjoy now, but
Yeah,
That's
the
fucked for your
first time
first
I had
one.
it was like, whoa, like
sludge.
this is not fun. I thought it was gonna taste like cola and like caramel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a very good fucking
And then-
childhood
and then-
description of it.
yeah, because like it looked like Coca-Cola, but then on the top, like with the fizzy stuff, like it looked like a caramel type thing.
And there, I think it's an
was
episode of
completely opposite.
Futurama or Family Guy where they like go to like a Guinness factory. And it's like, oh yeah, our two ingredients, beer and chocolate. I was like, cool. Oh, I can't wait to try Guinness. Fucking, I like Guinness, but like, it's not bad. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, it's definitely something that you'd have like one, and that's it.
Yeah.
It'd be
It
not
used to be like my beer of choice. I remember bringing it to like a music festival and people were like, what the fuck is wrong with you? I didn't realize it was an issue. Also the Pan-Galactic Gargle Blaster from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, described as having your brain smashed in with a slice of lemon wrapped around a large gold brick.
Yeah, the drink.
Yeah. They like I think there's a scene in the movie where they drink it. They're just like, like fucking so good.
Oh,
If you guys had to choose one fantasy food or from a movie or sci-fi or anything, which one would you choose if you could only taste one?
Bethesda sweet roll.
Oh.
It's in Fallout and Skyrim, so yeah,
It
be
is.
curious. Dandy boy apples, fancy lad snack cakes.
Oh, there was that one like the honey from Skyrim. I can't remember what it was. It was something honeyed, and that always looks super good to me.
Yeah. Honeyed nuts.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, give me them honeyed nuts.
yeah.
I think it'd be anime ramen for me. Like
Yeah.
I love noodles and it just looks so perfect in animation. Like just the
Yeah, just those
endless
scenes.
noodle.
Those scenes in like Studio Ghibli movies where you just see them making it and like the steam coming off. Oh my god. Heals my soul.
I just thought of something else.
Go ahead.
Yeah, actually, further to now that I'm thinking of Bethesda stuff, Yeah, because you know how, like I said in Aragon, he doesn't eat meat, despite after spending all this time like with elves and stuff. The Bosmer, like the wood elves
Oh yeah,
in Elder Scrolls, they don't eat vegetables, so it's the
yeah, they're
opposite.
cannibals, aren't they?
Uh,
Cannibals?
meat meat eaters, but
Carnivores?
No, 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 no. They're literally cannibals.
uh,
Damn.
depends.
Like the ones
Sometimes,
that are still in what is it, Atmer? That forest
yeah,
area.
no. I
They're
can't
still
think of
cannibals, I'm pretty sure.
like not always like they're meat eaters, but they will cannibalize.
Okay.
Um, but
Wait, which
usually
elves are those?
the Bosmer, like
The
the
wood
wood
elves.
elves,
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh.
Which
they're
is definitely like an inversion of Tolkien elves for sure.
yeah, which are well, I think Tolkien elves just eat just I guess like regular. I believe like I don't think they're strictly vegetarian or
Oh,
vegan.
okay.
But yeah, I don't know. But yeah, because like I remember like reading in Oblivion, like one of the like it was like a I forget the book's name, but it was like description of all like the different races in Elder Scrolls games, and in Oblivion, like they mentioned like um yeah, like all these like meat eaters, like carnivores and like cannibalism that takes place with the wood elves. But then you see like wood elf characters and they're just like the complete opposite of what you'd expect in Oblivion.
Yeah.
Oblivion more so because like the facial design and stuff like that are just like fucked. So like groundbreaking at the time, but just like horrifying now.
Have you guys ever had Turkish delight?
Yes.
I have, yeah.
Have you ever had a big Turk?
Yes.
I think so, yeah. I've seen them. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. I highly recommend, and my family thinks I'm disgusting. So just wanted to throw that out there. Will, have you ever tried the Birdie Bots beans?
Yes.
And what flavors do you remember getting?
Well, I like all types of jelly beans. I just put them all in my hand and just eat them at once. So
Savage.
That's disgusting. The Birdie Bots beans, dude.
I mean, yeah, I don't know.
Rotten egg.
It was like kind of like sour when I had all of them all at once. It was like
You're a
sour,
madman.
but yeah.
Do you guys have a favorite scene involving food?
Ooh.
Yes.
Go ahead, Will.
Gollum spreading the lembas bread all over poor Sam.
Oh man,
You're a monster.
That one's evil.
One of like the cruelest acts of betrayal.
You know what's funny? When you mentioned that scene, it reminded me of Patrick eating his own chocolate bar and thinking SpongeBob stole it. Yeah, no, that scene is evil.
Oh, you just reminded me of the scene of Squidward trying his first Krabby Patty.
Oh yeah. His lips like
Yeah, like the teeth like pulling it right like a molecular piece off.
yeah. Dude, I can't. You know what's funny? That image. I remember A&W had a bison burger once, and I remember biting into it, and it was so salty, but like the meat was so what's the word? The opposite of dense. I can't think.
Loose.
Sure. But
Loose meat.
the meat was so loose that like it just like wasn't packed in enough, you know, it wasn't dense enough. So I remember biting it and like my teeth clacking, you know, like it wasn't enough to sink your teeth into. And I felt like Squidward like, biting the Krabby Patty. Well, I had to go back and get a second burger because it tasted fantastic, but it was like it was just wasn't enough, you know.
Yeah. Actually, like I've had something similar to fantasy food, salted pork, like the real stuff.
Yeah.
And it was horrifying. I do not recommend it.
What? Just salted pork? Like,
Yeah, but it was like someone who actually like cured it and stuff, and like it was like real OG salted pork. So I was like, sweet, I'll just like fry this up a la spam, and then yeah, so I'm like, all right, cool. Then like I had like one piece and like I almost like threw up because like it was like the saltiest thing I've ever had in my life. Like, yeah, like it actually like upset my stomach with like the amount of salt in just like one like square like that. And like,
Gross.
yeah. So salted pork's a no.
Luca, have you do you have a favorite scene involving food?
Ah, favorite scene. I don't know. Maybe honestly, maybe it's the Aragon soup scene, just because like it's stuck with me so long. Like since I was a kid, like the first time I saw the Two Towers,
Mhm.
I've thought that soup looked so good.
I'm gonna have to rewatch that scene.
I think it honestly might be that soup. Like I want to try that soup. It looks so delicious, and that shrimp looks so like crunchy.
Oh man, that
What
sounds
else?
good. I'm so hungry.
I mean, yeah, any anime scene with food though, like
For sure.
Uh,
I was also going to say this is not fantasy or sci-fi, but I guess it is fiction. Inglorious Bastards, that scene, like it has not much to do with the food, but the scene with like the apple strudel, like wait for the cream.
yeah.
Like it's just a terrifying scene. And using that food to sort of like showcase or a metaphor towards like the indulgence of these evil people who would like, do the things they do without question, and then can sit here and like enjoy this apple strudel and not feel terrible about themselves.
Yeah.
Uh,
I don't even
I
think
just
he
think it's
finished
super
it.
powerful. Sorry,
I don't even think he finished it in the movie, does he?
I can't remember.
Yeah, I don't know. It was very terrifying.
Yeah.
What about my meat jar?
Oh yeah, okay. Let's tell that story on the podcast. I go over to Will's house and there's just a jar in the top cupboard where he keeps like, what was it, like your cups or something?
yeah.
And it looked like you were harvesting or like performing some sort of alchemy. Like, so I asked, and that's his response was, it's the meat jar. I don't think I've never gotten an explanation beyond that. So please.
Yeah. So it's a fairly large jar too. It's like
Large.
that. Yeah. Oh, so like this is in 2016. I know this because it's labeled as such, but my uncle
You
and I
said
had
do you still have it?
oh yeah. Um yeah,
The same jar.
it's traveled with me over several places that I've lived. Yeah, so anyways, my uncle and I we shot this moose, and then he decided to like pickle the meat, and it's pretty horrifying looking. And like I don't know.
It's like it's cultured in there. It's like those fucking terrarium things that like sustain themselves. It's fucking like that, man.
Well, yeah, it's like airtight, so like it hasn't like rotted, but like it's definitely like there's like the liquid inside it is like tinged red from like the blood.
Yo, can you get a picture of it so I can put it
If I can
in the
find
video?
it, yeah.
Yeah. You can't
You don't
locate
know.
the jar.
Well, it's in storage.
Are you saying you have a 5-year-old jar of meat in storage? Just
yeah. Well, so like I like got, and he's like, I remember I like saw him like at the holiday season, like sometime after, like a few months afterwards, and he's like, "Here, I got some like pickled meat." I'm like, "Okay, cool." And then yeah, so then I like brought it back to like this place where I was living with my roommates, and like obviously everyone was like horrified by it. And then I was like, yeah, it's like my apocalypse meats, like in case like the world ends, and like this is all that I
Oh no, hang on. This is why you keep it around. You got your Canterbury classics and your jar of meat for when the world ends and you can rebuild society. You're growing someone in the fucking jar of meat, man.
Yeah,
And you
it's
can
just
teach them all
stem
about
cells.
Aragon.
Yeah, so and then yeah, I just put it all like in my like it wasn't even like in the downstairs like pantry for fear of if somebody like dropped it and broke it open or something, because like the smell would be terrifying. So like I just like kept it like in like my like bedroom closet, and then
how is that better?
so it's mine. Then stayed there for about like 2016 to about 2018.
Oh my god.
And it traveled with me when I went to Saskatoon for the summer when I was studying there. And then,
Why? Why did I travel with you?
because I didn't want to like bring it back to like my parents' place, so they would have a lot of questions, and those questions would have to be answered. So then,
Wait, but why didn't you eat it from the get-go? You just didn't want it?
I was pickled meat. It looked horrifying. And then,
So why do you?
It looked horrifying then, dude. It's been 6 years.
but it hasn't changed in
Oh.
6 years. So then, yeah, then I brought it with me to Calgary from where it remained for 3 years, and yeah,
And now you've moved back home and took it with you back there.
yeah. But
So,
it's
like,
in a
there was
box.
a point in time where you like put it in a box or put it in your car and weren't like, why? It's like the Ring, dude. You're like, you could have cast it into the fire, but you're like, no,
It's
throw away the
mine.
jar, Will.
Yeah, no. I mean, you wouldn't be able to reuse the jar because just the smell would be horrifying. But
I have not heard a single pro keeping this meat.
well, in case the world ends, and I have to
You'll eat
something
it? Will you eat this pickled meat?
if I have to.
You know what I would like? I would like you to tell your uncle who made it that you still have it and see what his thoughts are.
Honestly, like the life expectancy was probably like it was probably intended to only be like a couple of months, like pickled fish.
So what if it's not good anymore? What if it's like you eat it and you get a third eye or something? I don't know. Or you start growing moose antlers.
I don't know.
It'd be like the most tragic sci-fi, like post-apocalyptic story, like survives the whole apocalypse just to poison himself with his own pickled meat.
Oh my god. Son, this jar of meat and these box set of Aragon is
Yeah.
yours.
The Knopf edition.
Dad just eats it and fucking dies. No.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the story I'm writing. Oh man, that was disgusting. Thanks for sharing your experience with us.
I'm trying to
I
find
just want to
a
add
picture of
the from Pokemon Stadium.
it. Yeah.
There was a game. Will do the sound real quick.
I don't know. What sound?
The beginning sound when there's the Lickitung game with the sushi belts.
I don't know. I only ever play Pokemon Stadium 2.
Yeah, it's the one. You know the game with the Lickitungs, and you have to like shoot your tongue out onto the conveyor belt, grab the thing, and put it back in your like zone. It's like a mini game.
That was Pokemon Stadium 1.
Oh,
Yeah,
you do the
Pokemon
sound every time we play fucking NHL. Like the yo. People will get it.
Yeah.
But yeah, on that note, does anybody have anything else to add about the food of film, fantasy, and sci-fi?
Oh, just that Kung Fu Panda has some great food animation too. It was on my list.
Nice.
The soup and the buns, animated like hot pork buns and stuff looks so
Oh
good.
my god, yes. Oh, you just reminded
And
me something
dumplings.
like the buns, yeah, with the oh my gosh. Oh man, I'm so hungry.
Yeah, me too. Now.
Oh, Will, anything to add?
I'm just looking for pictures of my meat jar.
Yeah. Whoa. Yeah, we're gonna get demonetized. Yeah. That'll do it for us here. Again, please make sure you are liking and subscribing to the channel, liking the video, that is. Let us know your food favorites, things you have tried, have made, willing to try. Maybe again, if we ever return to in-person recordings or move towards that sort of model, or just a side thing, maybe we can try to cook a dish from one of the various food of Tolkien or food of Dungeons and Dragons or something like that.
I have a good one. My
yeah.
milkfish.
Oh, we're not gonna. No.
The milkfish. Yeah.
There was a point in time, Luca, where Will would just send me the meals he was making for himself when he was a bachelor, and it was fucking depressing.
No way. It was like,
Fish, dude. That sounds like something off like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
I just watched
Charlie would-
Kiki's Delivery Service last night, and like the granny in that movie makes like a pumpkin and herring pie. It's like a pie with like a fish on top baked into the crust, and the person who
Ew,
receives it's like,
dude.
oh, Granny sent one of her stupid buys again.
No, it's just
Oh.
noodles, tuna, and
Will just
milk.
sent us the milkfish in the. It's dude, come
I'll put
on.
this in
Why
the
would
video,
you even
man.
do
I'll
this?
put it in the
Like,
video.
that's why.
Mongolian, man.
That
Eating
just
like
looks like
Genghis
it looks like
Khan.
a can of tuna that you put in like
Oh,
a pan with milk.
That's exactly what it is with noodles.
Gross, man.
how'd it taste?
It's actually pretty good if you season it right.
I don't believe you.
Oh man, you were something else. Anyways, yeah. Like, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. Look out for this Friday, Ruminations, the Bone Shard Daughter. Follow us on Instagram, follow us on Twitter, follow us on TikTok. We have a TikTok now. All those things. Thanks for watching. As always, I'm Matt.
I'm Luca.
And I'm Will.
We are the Lords of Lore. Lords of Lore. That Lord, Lord. Nice. Oh, wait. I bought this book because it had food on it.
Ooh.
Yeah. I think it's called You Me. It's by Ghanaian writer named Sifton Tracy Annie Pare. Really cool. And that's why I bought it. Okay.